Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, heart heavy with worry, asking silently, why did this happen to me? Maybe it was a broken relationship, a lost job, or a painful memory that just won't fade. In those moments, it feels like the weight of the world is sitting on your chest, doesn't it? And then, from somewhere, a song drifts in. Maybe it's from the radio, maybe it's from a distant memory. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Those three little words, let it be, sound so simple. But if you've lived long enough, you know how deeply powerful they really are. It's not just a lyric, it's a life lesson, a kind of wisdom. And interestingly, it echoes something that the Buddha taught over 2,500 years ago. You see, the Buddhist path is not about escaping pain or pretending suffering doesn't exist. No, it's about facing life fully, with its joy and its sorrow, and learning to be at peace with what is. Buddhism teaches us that suffering arises when we cling too tightly, whether to people, expectations, memories, or outcomes we can't control. The more we resist change, the more we suffer. Now here's a question I want to ask you, not as a lecture, but as an invitation. What if peace doesn't come from fixing everything, but from no longer needing everything to be fixed? What if the real power is not in holding on, but in knowing when to let go? Let it be doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean ignoring injustice or sitting silently in the face of what's wrong. What it does mean is choosing not to drown in the chaos. It means staying grounded when life throws storms your way. It means acknowledging the pain without letting it define who you are. I once met an old Buddhist monk in Thailand who told me something I've never forgotten. He said, "You don't have to carry the fire to stay warm. Sometimes just sitting beside it is enough." At the time, I didn't understand what he meant. But later, when I went through a difficult season of loss, it hit me. I was trying to control everything, trying to solve grief, to outthink sadness, to push the pain away. But none of that worked. It was only when I sat quietly, acknowledged what I was feeling, and let the waves come without resistance, that I began to feel light again. That's what Let It Be is about. So in this video, we're going to take a deeper look at how this simple phrase, made famous by a Beatles song, holds profound wisdom that mirrors Buddhist teachings on suffering, acceptance, and inner peace. We'll explore how you can begin applying this mindset in your everyday life, no matter what you're going through right now. Whether you're facing stress at work, tension in your relationships, or just that quiet anxiety that shows up in the middle of the night, this perspective could be the key that helps you breathe again. So I invite you to take a deep breath with me. Let's begin a journey, not to escape life's hardships, but to meet them with more peace, more clarity, and maybe a little more compassion for ourselves. Let It Be. Title: Understanding Suffering, A Path Toward Peace. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt a pain so deep, so personal, that you couldn't even put it into words? Maybe it was the loss of someone you love. Maybe it was the silent struggle of watching your dreams fall apart. Or maybe it was just the slow, invisible ache of waking up each day feeling empty inside. If you've ever asked yourself, why is life so hard sometimes? You're not alone. In fact, more than 2,500 years ago, the Buddha asked the very same question. And what he discovered became the foundation of one of the most compassionate, insightful teachings ever shared with the world, what we now call the Four Noble Truths. Let's walk through them together. The first noble truth is simple, but profound. Suffering is part of life. It's not a punishment. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's just part of being human. And suffering doesn't always mean dramatic, tragic events. It can be subtle, the tension in your chest after a tough conversation, the fear of losing someone you love, the stress of trying to hold everything together when you're falling apart inside. We suffer when things change, because they always do. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The second noble truth tells us where suffering comes from. It's not just about the pain itself, it's about how we relate to it. We suffer because we cling. We cling to people, to success, to health, to being right, to how we think life should be. Let me give you a quick example. Imagine someone loses their job. That hurts. But what adds more suffering is the story that follows. I'm worthless. I'll never recover. I failed. Or someone close to you passes away. That grief is real, but we suffer even more when we say, this shouldn't have happened. I can't live without them. It's not just the event, it's our resistance to it that creates deeper pain. We hold on to things that are constantly changing, our bodies, our relationships, our identities. But life is always in motion. That's the nature of impermanence. Now this might sound heavy, but here's where hope shines through. The third noble truth says, freedom is possible. We can end suffering, not by eliminating all pain, but by transforming our relationship with it. And how do we do that? That's where the fourth noble truth comes in, the path out of suffering. The Buddha called it the Noble Eightfold Path, which is really just a way of living with more awareness, compassion, and balance. It includes things like right understanding, right action, and right mindfulness. Put simply, it's about seeing clearly, living ethically, and training the mind through meditation so we're not pulled around by every passing thought or emotion. Now you might be wondering, does this actually work in real life? Let me share something personal. Years ago, I went through a painful breakup. It felt like my whole identity was shattered. I blamed myself. I blamed them. I replayed every conversation in my head. I kept thinking, this shouldn't have happened. But it wasn't until I stopped resisting the pain, until I stopped trying to change the past, that I finally began to heal. I didn't find peace by controlling the outcome. I found peace by accepting what was, and by learning to sit with my emotions rather than fight them. This is what the Buddha meant when he said, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. When we understand our pain, not just run from it, we begin to loosen the grip it has on us. So if you're going through something right now, if life feels unfair or overwhelming, I invite you to pause, not to fix everything, not to explain it away, but to breathe and look at your experience through a new lens. Suffering isn't a sign that you're broken. It's an invitation to wake up, to see the patterns, to understand the clinging, and to discover the freedom that comes, not from escape, but from clarity. In the next part of this video, we'll explore how Let It Be connects with this path of letting go, and how it might help you find peace, even in the middle of life's most difficult moments. But for now, remember this. You are not alone in your suffering, and you are not powerless in the face of it. Title: Embracing Change, the Beauty of Impermanence. Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at an old photo of yourself and felt a quiet ache in your chest? Maybe it was from your 20s, when your skin glowed with youth, your eyes sparkled with dreams, and life felt limitless. Or maybe it was a photo with someone you once loved, someone who's no longer here. And for just a moment, you wish you could go back. We all do that, don't we? We long for moments that have passed. We hold on to the past or try to freeze the present because deep down, we don't want things to change. But here's the truth, everything changes. This idea isn't new. In fact, in Buddhism, it's called anicca, or impermanence, and it's one of the most powerful, liberating truths we can embrace. Think about it. Everything in life is in motion. The seasons shift, our bodies age, emotions rise and fall. People enter our lives and leave. Even the most stable things, a job, a home, a relationship, are never truly permanent. And yet, we suffer. Not because things change, but because we resist that change. We want our kids to stay little. We want our health to stay perfect. We want love to last forever. We want happiness to be a constant state. But life doesn't work that way. We cling to what's fleeting, hoping it will stay. And in doing so, we create our own suffering. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. That's what attachment feels like. Let me tell you a little story. A friend of mine went through a painful divorce. He kept saying, I just want things to go back to the way they were. But the more he fought reality, the more he suffered. It wasn't until he started accepting the truth that things had changed and would never be the same that he found a strange kind of peace. Not because the pain disappeared, but because he stopped clinging to what no longer was. It's like a river. You can't hold the water still, but if you let go and let it flow, you begin to move with life instead of against it. And that's where peace lives. Now, I'm not saying change is easy. Losing your youth, letting go of someone you love, watching life turn in directions you didn't plan, it hurts. But impermanence isn't just a cause of grief. It's also what gives life its beauty. Think about a sunset. Its colors are so vivid, so breathtaking, because it doesn't last. A flower is most precious not because it blooms forever, but because it blooms just once. In the same way, your life, your moments, your memories, they matter because they're temporary. This is the paradox of impermanence. Yes, things change, but that's what makes them precious. So instead of asking, how can I keep this forever? Maybe the better question is, how can I fully be here, right now, before it passes? That's the practice. Not to freeze time, not to fear change, but to meet each moment with open hands and an open heart. It's not about being passive. It's about learning to dance with life, even when the music changes. So today, if you're holding on too tightly, if you're mourning what once was or fearing what's ahead, I invite you to try something. Pause, breathe, look around, and remind yourself this moment is not forever, but it is yours right now. Embrace it, because just like the river, life flows, and when we learn to flow with it rather than fight it, that's when peace, resilience, and even joy begin to rise. Title: Letting Go Without Losing Love, the Freedom of Non-Attachment. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that the thought of losing them felt unbearable? Maybe it was a partner, a child, a parent, or even a lifelong friend. And somewhere in that love, there was fear. Fear that they might leave, change, or be taken from you. So you held on tighter. You tried to control. You tried to protect. But somehow, the more you held on, the more things slipped away. We've all been there. That's why today I want to talk about something that feels almost impossible, but is deeply liberating. It's the Buddhist idea of non-attachment, and how learning to love without clinging can set us and the people we care about free. Now first, let's be clear. Non-attachment is not the same as indifference. It doesn't mean shutting down your emotions or walking through life like you don't care. In fact, it's the opposite. It means showing up fully, loving deeply, but not confusing love with possession. You see, most of us attach because we're afraid. Afraid of loss, afraid of change, afraid that if we don't hold on tight, we'll lose what we love. But here's the painful irony. Attachment doesn't prevent loss. It creates suffering. Think about this. When a relationship ends, when a dream fails, or when something precious is taken away, why does it hurt so much? Of course, part of it is the natural pain of grief. But much of it comes from the voice in our head that says, this was mine. This shouldn't have changed. I can't live without it. But can we really own anything? Our bodies change. Our thoughts shift. Our possessions age. Even the people in our lives, no one stays the same. Everything is temporary. Everything is borrowed. I once heard a monk say, you don't own your loved ones. You're just lucky enough to walk beside them for a little while. That hit me like lightning. And it made me realize real love doesn't say, you're mine. It says, I honor your freedom. Here's a simple image. Imagine holding a bird in your hand. If you grip it tightly, you crush it. But if you keep your palm open, the bird can choose to stay or fly. And in that space, love becomes a gift, not a chain. This doesn't just apply to relationships. Think about how we relate to things. Our cars, our phones, our homes. We often say, this is mine, and tie our identity to them. But when they break or get lost, we're devastated. Because we didn't just lose an object, we lost a part of ourselves. But what if we use things without letting them use us? Or take success and failure? How often do we tie our self-worth to what we achieve? When we succeed, we feel proud. When we fail, we feel broken. But neither success nor failure defines who we are. The same goes for our emotions. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by sadness, anger, or anxiety? like they were controlling you? In mindfulness practice, we learn to observe emotions like clouds passing in the sky. They're not you, they're just experiences moving through. When you stop clinging to every feeling as a fact, you begin to find peace, even in the middle of a storm. So here's the question I want to leave you with. What are you holding on to so tightly that it's actually holding you back? A relationship, a version of yourself, an old story about how life should be? What would happen if you opened your hand? Non-attachment isn't cold, it's courageous. It's the courage to love without fear, to experience joy without needing it to last, to give your heart and still let go. Because the truth is, the more lightly we hold the world, the more fully we can live in it. And maybe, just maybe, that's where real freedom begins. Title: Let It Be, the Power of Patience and Surrender. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt frustrated because things weren't happening fast enough? Maybe you were stuck in traffic, just trying to get home after a long day. Or maybe you sent a text to someone and watched the screen, waiting for those 3 little dots to appear. Or maybe you've been working so hard on yourself, healing, growing, building something meaningful, and you wonder, why isn't it happening yet? That impatience, that restless, anxious feeling, it's something we all face. And yet, when you really sit with it, it reveals something deeper. We're not frustrated because things are slow. We're frustrated because we want reality to be different. We want life to move according to our timeline. We want answers now. We want change now. We want peace now. But here's the truth that many of us struggle to accept. Life doesn't respond to our urgency. It unfolds in its own time. And trying to rush it only exhausts us. There's a line in the Beatles' song, Let It Be, that says, "There will be an answer. Let it be." That one lyric carries a profound wisdom, not just about faith in the future, but about the strength it takes to wait for it. Because patience is not passive. It's not about giving up. It's about having the courage to stand where you are, even when everything inside you wants to run ahead. Think about it. How many times have you suffered? Not because something was truly wrong, but because you were resisting what is. Resisting the moment, resisting the slowness, resisting the silence. When we let go of that resistance, even a little, something incredible begins to happen. We start to make peace with what is, instead of chasing what should be. And in that space, right there, we rediscover our freedom. Let me share something I've learned in my own life. A few years ago, I was going through a period of deep uncertainty. Career changes, family stress, a lot of waiting. I kept asking, when will things finally fall into place? And every day that the answer didn't come, I felt more anxious. Until one day I sat quietly and asked myself a different question. What if this waiting isn't punishment? What if it's preparation? That moment changed me. I stopped forcing answers. I started listening instead, and slowly, quietly, life began to move. Not the way I expected, but in ways I couldn't have planned if I tried. You see, surrender doesn't mean doing nothing. It means we stop trying to control everything. It means trusting that the timeline we're so obsessed with might not be the one that brings the deepest growth. Next time you feel that familiar impatience rising in your chest, try this. Pause, feel it, name it, and instead of reacting, just breathe with it. Let it move through you without having to act on it. That is patience, that is strength, and that is the heart of Let It Be. We don't need to force the answers. We don't need to chase peace. We need to create space for both to arrive in their own time. So if you're in a season of waiting right now, if things feel slow, unclear, or out of reach, this is your reminder. You are not behind. You are right where you need to be. Let it be. Let me start with a question. Have you ever driven somewhere and then realized you don't remember a single moment of the drive? Or maybe you were eating dinner, but your mind was already at tomorrow's meeting, next week's bills, or something that happened 10 years ago. We've all done it. We live in a world that pulls our attention in 1,000 directions. And without realizing it, we begin to miss our own lives. Our bodies are here, but our minds, they're scattered, lost in regrets about the past or worries about the future. And yet, the only place life truly exists is right now. This breath, this moment, this heartbeat. In Buddhism, there's a word for the practice of fully inhabiting this moment, mindfulness. Now, mindfulness isn't just meditation or sitting quietly with your eyes closed. It's not about forcing your thoughts to stop. It's about noticing them. It's about becoming aware, without judgment, of what's happening inside you and around you. It's the difference between eating and actually tasting your food, between hearing someone and truly listening to their heart. When we practice mindfulness, something incredible begins to happen. First, we respond with wisdom, not reactivity. You know that moment when someone says something hurtful and your first impulse is to snap back? Mindfulness helps us pause. It gives us that sacred space between stimulus and response. And in that space, we can choose clarity over chaos. Second, mindfulness helps reduce suffering. We often think pain comes from what happens to us, but much of our suffering comes from how we relate to it. When we're mindful, we don't get swept away by every wave of anger, fear, or sadness. We observe our emotions like watching clouds move across the sky, temporary, shifting, not who we are. And third, mindfulness deepens our appreciation for life. Let me share something simple. One morning I was drinking tea, just tea, no phone, no headlines, no to-do list. And for a few minutes, I actually tasted it. The warmth, the texture, the quiet comfort of it. It felt like a gift because I was present enough to receive it. How many gifts have we missed because we weren't really there? A child's laughter. A kind word from a stranger. The way sunlight moves across the kitchen floor in the late afternoon. These moments are tiny miracles, but we only see them when we slow down enough to notice. So how do we start? You don't need to become a monk or retreat to the mountains. Mindfulness lives in the everyday. When you eat, eat. Feel the texture. Taste every bite. Notice your body's response. When you walk, walk. Feel the ground beneath your feet, the rhythm of your breath, the air on your skin. When you listen, listen. Not just to the words, but to the emotion behind them. The pauses, the silences. Start small. One mindful breath in the middle of a stressful day. One moment of gratitude before you sleep. One conversation where you're truly present. Over time, these moments build a life, not just of peace, but of presence. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, scattered, or numb, maybe the answer isn't to do more. Maybe the answer is to come home to this moment, because this is where your life is. And when you begin to live here, fully, openly, without judgment, you don't just survive, you begin to truly live. Let it be here now, and watch how everything starts to change.
Let me ask you a question. What are you still carrying that you no longer need? Maybe it's an old grudge. Maybe it's a toxic relationship. Maybe it's the pressure to be perfect, to always achieve more, to always have more.
Whatever it is, here's the truth. Some things don't belong in the next chapter of your life, and the only way to move forward is to let go. In Buddhism, there's a concept called renunciation. In Pali, it's called nekama, or in modern terms, letting go. But let's be clear, this isn't about running away from life. It's not about shaving your head or moving to a mountain cave unless you really want to. It's about choosing to release the thoughts, attachments, and patterns that no longer serve your peace. Because here's what we rarely admit. A lot of our suffering isn't caused by life itself, but by the weight we refuse to put down. We hold on because we've been conditioned to believe that our happiness is tied to what we have, our possessions, our reputation, our stories from the past. We cling to what we know, even if it hurts, because the unknown feels scary. We tell ourselves, if I let this go, I'll be lost, I'll be empty. But here's the paradox. It's often in the letting go that we finally feel whole. Let me share something personal. There was a period in my life where I was trying so hard to hold everything together, career, relationships, self-image. I was exhausted from the pretending. And one day I asked myself, what if I just stopped? What if I stopped holding on to what was never really mine? That decision didn't break me. It freed me. You don't have to give up life. You just have to give up the illusions that keep you stuck. And letting go doesn't mean becoming cold or detached. It means becoming wise enough to see what's worth holding and what's quietly draining your spirit. So how do we practice this kind of letting go in daily life? Start with simplicity. Cut back on the noise. Ask yourself, do I really need this thing? This expectation? This constant pressure to prove myself? Try living with less and see if it creates more room for joy. Let go of toxic relationships. You don't need to hate anyone. You just don't have to let them live in your mind, rent-free, draining your energy. Wish them well and move on. Let go of resentment. You're not forgiving them because they deserve it. You're forgiving them because you deserve peace. Let go of the need to control. Life unfolds how it needs to, not always how we want. Release the obsession with outcomes and return to the present moment, where you actually have power. And here's the beautiful part. When we let go, we create space, and in that space, you'll start to notice the quiet joys again. A peaceful morning, a warm cup of tea, the way sunlight hits your window. You'll realize that happiness doesn't come from more, it comes from enough. So today I invite you to reflect. What are you willing to release so you can reclaim your peace? Letting go isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's strength. It's the deep, steady knowing that you don't need to carry everything. You're allowed to lay it down. And maybe, just maybe, when you do, you'll finally hear the quiet whisper beneath all the noise gently saying, let it be. Title, Let It Be, a whisper of wisdom for everyday life. So here we are. We've traveled together through stories of suffering, change, love, letting go, mindfulness, and patience. And if you've made it this far, I want you to take a moment, just one breath, and feel proud of yourself. Because this isn't just a video. It's a journey back to something we often lose in the rush of life. Peace. We began with the truth that suffering exists, not as punishment, but as a part of the human experience. And we saw how suffering is born not just from pain itself, but from our resistance to pain, our clinging, our need to control, our fear of change. Then we explored the nature of impermanence. Everything changes. From our bodies to our relationships, nothing stays the same. And yet, that very truth, rather than being a source of fear, can become a source of freedom, if we're willing to embrace it. We talked about loving without owning, letting go of the illusion that people, outcomes, or things belong to us. Because real love isn't about possession, it's about presence. We learned about patience, not the kind that grits its teeth, but the kind that opens its arms. Because sometimes the greatest strength is the ability to wait, without forcing. We practiced mindfulness, coming back to this moment, this breath, this life. Not escaping the world, but waking up in it, fully, gently, gratefully. And we talked about renunciation, not as rejection of life, but as a wise and loving choice to let go of what no longer nourishes us. Old stories, heavy burdens, expectations that don't belong to us anymore. And through all of this, one phrase kept whispering to us, let it be. But what does that really mean? It doesn't mean we give up. It doesn't mean we sit back and do nothing. It means we learn to act without clinging, to care deeply without trying to control everything, to trust that we can show up fully without having to fix, force, or fear the outcome. To let it be is to say, I've done what I can. Now I surrender the rest. I release my grip, not because I don't care, but because I finally trust the flow of life. And when we do this, not once, but as a daily practice, something beautiful happens. We become lighter, kinder, more present, more alive. We begin to see that happiness isn't found in control. It's found in connection, in letting each moment be what it is, in meeting life not with fear, but with curiosity and compassion. So here's my invitation to you. Next time you feel overwhelmed, next time life doesn't go the way you planned, next time your heart aches with uncertainty, pause, breathe, and whisper to yourself, not in defeat, but in wisdom, let it be. Because that's not just a lyric, it's a teaching, a practice, a path back home. If this message resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Comment below, what's one painful moment that helped you grow? If this touched you, subscribe. Let's keep walking together.